Hello and welcome to another day of English 2. I'm your online facilitator, Miss Abear. Yesterday, we finished reading. I say we finished reading. We paused after you guys had some independent reading where Jerry was taking some risks. We're going to finish that today, but before we do, let's take a look at our end of the unit task as well as our mid-unit task. So we are, again to remind you, we are on a Unit 1 Coming of Age from CommonLit, and our essential question is, what experiences lead us from childhood into adulthood? And when we get to about midterm, we're going to write a personal narrative describing the experiences that lead us or that have been part of our transition out of childhood. So when we're writing that, we're going to be thinking about the following: a loss that you experienced, a realization or truth that you learned, a new responsibility that you had to take on, and or a risk you decided to take. In the text that we're reading now, Jerry is taking some risks. And so I want you to be thinking about some of the risks that you have taken in your life and think about how they might correlate to the risks that Jerry is taking. So we're going to start with a whole group reading. So follow along with me in your packet as I read. It says that we're going to do a lot more whole group reading than we're actually going to do today. I trust that you guys can read a lot of this independently, so I'm going to give you some time for independent reading today and have time to answer those questions. So follow along with me. Right now we're going to read paragraphs 33 and 34, and we're going to pause and answer a question, and then we're going to read paragraphs 35 through 37 and answer a question, and then you're going to read the rest by yourself. But again, what should you be doing while I'm reading or when you're reading? That's right. You should be annotating the text with those signposts as well as that other question for this text. And what was that question? That's right, those descriptive details. We're looking at descriptive details and descriptive moments. Make sure that you're marking those. All right, so grab your paper. We're on page 6 at the very top, and follow along with me as I read out loud. Paragraph 33. In another 4 days, his mother said casually one morning, they must go home. One day before they left, he would do it. He would do it if it killed him, he said defiantly to himself. But 2 days before they were to leave, a day of triumph when he increased his count by 15. His nose bled so badly that he turned dizzy and had to lie limply over the big rock like a bit of seaweed, watching the thick red blood flow onto the rock and trickle slowly down to the sea. He was frightened. Supposing he turned dizzy in the tunnel. Supposing he died there, trapped. Supposing... His head went around in the hot sun, and he almost gave up. He thought he would return to the house and lie down, and next summer, perhaps, when he had another year's growth on him, then he would go through that hole. But even after he had made the decision, or thought he had, he found himself sitting up on the rock and looking down into the water, and he knew that now, this moment, when his nose had only just stopped bleeding, when his head was still sore and throbbing, this was the moment when he would try. If he did not do it now, he never would. He was trembling with fear that he would not go, and he was trembling with horror at that long, long tunnel under the rock, under the sea. Even at the open sunlight, the barrier rock seemed very wide and very heavy. Tons of rock pressed down on where he would go. If he died there, he would lie until one day, perhaps not before next year, those big boys would swim into it and find it blocked. I'm going to stop there. There is a question about setting in your margin. It says underline 2 details that describe the tunnel, and then you're to write, what do the details suggest about the swim Jerry is about to begin? So write your answers to those questions in the margin. Good. Let's pick back up at paragraph 35. And again, we're going to read paragraph 35 through 37 before we have another question to answer. So follow along with me as I continue reading. He put on his goggles, fitted them tight, tested the vacuum. His hands were shaking. Then he chose the biggest stone he could carry and slipped over the edge of the rock until half of him was in the cool, enclosing water and half in the hot sun. He looked up once at the empty sky, filled his lungs once, twice, and then he sank fast to the bottom with the stone. He let it go and began to count. He took the edges of the hole in his hands and drew himself in, wriggling his shoulders in sideways as he remembered he must, kicking himself along with his feet. Soon he was clear inside. He was in a small roundabout hole filled with yellowish gray water. The water was pushing him up against the roof. The roof was sharp and pained his back. He pulled himself along with his hands, fast, and used his legs as levers. His head knocked against something. A sharp pain dizzied him. 50, 51, 52. He was without light, and the water seemed to press upon him with the weight of the rock. 71, 72. There was no strain on his lungs. He felt like an inflated balloon. His lungs were so light and easy, but his head was pulsing. He was being continually pressed up against the sharp roof, which felt slimy as well as sharp. Again, he thought of octopuses and wondered if the tunnel might be filled with weed that could entangle him. He gave himself a panicky, convulsive kick forward, ducked his head, and swam. His feet and hands moved freely as if on open water. The hole must have widened out. He thought he must be swimming fast, and he was frightened of banging his head, and the tunnel narrowed. All right, I'm going to stop there. It was building some suspense, wasn't it? It's going to build more suspense. I want you to keep up with those details, but right now we're going to stop, and I want you to find some evidence. Underline 3 details that reveal the physical struggles Jerry has while swimming through the tunnel. And then you're going to write, how do those details affect the readers? You're going to answer those questions in your margins, and when you finish, you are going to finish the passage independently. I want you to do it all by yourself because you can. And as you're reading, make sure that you're marking that text with those descriptive details, descriptive moments, and answering the questions in the margins. When you get to the end, I'm sorry, I went a little farther than I needed to. There are some questions at the end of the text that you will need to answer, and it will tell you where to go for the answers to those questions, which paragraphs to go to. So I want you to answer those questions, and you'll turn that into your teacher, and you will hopefully have some time of discussion. So next time we're going to do a little bit of writing and look at how to incorporate text into your writing. So until next time, I hope you have a great day and happy reading.